teacher, I tried very hard to treat all my students fairly, to be loving and kind, and to make sure that they had all that they needed to be successful. But it is true that because these little ones are real people, there were some children whose personality, whose way just clicked with your personality, with my personality. And they were those who were your favorites, although you tried not to treat them with in any special way. But you remember them, and you wished each and every day that you had 10 of them in your classroom, or that each year you would meet someone like that. And Jonathan was such a student. I had Jonathan as a second grader, and I was fortunate enough that at the end of the year, I was promoted to be a third grade teacher, and Jonathan came with me to third grade. So for 2 years, I enjoyed Jonathan, his curiosity, his kindness, his zest for life. He played hard, he worked hard. He was someone who reasoned with you, who sat down and would argue with you, and he just was someone who you remembered. So I sent Jonathan at the end of third grade on to fourth grade. And one day, his fourth grade teacher said to me that she needed to have a word with me. And of course, about one of the students that I had last year, I went through the whole list, and I thought maybe it's this one, maybe it's that. Jonathan was not on that list at all. Could not picture Jonathan as someone who would cause a teacher to have concern. But it was Jonathan. Jonathan was busy telling the fourth grade teacher how to do things. She obviously wasn't doing it the right way, because Jonathan, for good or for bad, had had Miss Barnett for 2 years. So Miss Barnett's way had to be the way. So Jonathan and I sat down and we talked about what school, what education was about. Why were we part of this community, these classrooms? We talked about the fact that it was a place where you were creative, a place where you were allowed to be curious, a place where you learned how to be part of community, a place where you could think outside the box, where you learned how to serve others, a place where it wasn't just about you, it was about everyone thriving. And that looked different in different rooms, with different ages, with different subjects, with different teachers. But it didn't mean that the essence of learning had changed, that the goals of learning had changed. I know that Jonathan settled into the fourth grade routine, and fifth, he's now a grown man, married with children. And he has learned that he must adjust with each age group, with each community, with each set of rules that he has, to make sure that not only he thrives, but that others in that community thrive as well. In many ways, Jonathan learned, blessed are the flexible. When I'm thinking of it, he learned, blessed are the flexible. And Jesus, in today's gospel, talks about the fact that although the commandments stand, the law of Moses, the 12 commandments, is 613 offshoots of that group of laws that God gave Moses. They stand. Jesus says, I wouldn't change. I have not come to change even an iota, even a letter of the commandment. I have come to fulfill them. Yet we read here in today's gospel that he says, you have heard it said, but I say to you. It sounds like change. it sounds like there's a new rule in the land. But if we listen carefully, we realize that what Jesus is saying is the times have changed. The community is experiencing something different. We need to interpret the law so that the law remains true to itself. You see, the essence of God's law is about us all thriving in community. God called a people to himself before God gave the laws about how to relate to each other. The laws are about strengthening the community. The laws are about getting our attention on others in the community so that we can figure out how to help them to experience life in all its wonders, in its abundance. So if we were to unpack this passage, we would understand that something is happening in that first century when Jesus walked this earth. Something is happening around anger. Something is happening about divorce. Something is happening about swearing. It would take a Bible study to actually unpack that. But what we need to know is that Jesus isn't saying what Moses taught is wrong. Jesus is saying we have to figure out what makes sense now. We need to interpret the law so that it makes sense for us in this place. He calls us to do the same. We are a people living in a different time, amongst a more diverse community. And we have to look at the laws of God and ask ourselves as people, as a church, how to interpret those laws so that everyone thrives, so that there is justice and prosperity for all. That is God's will for us. Yesterday, I attended a service at the cathedral in honor of Absalom Jones. And the speaker there reminded us that when the Constitution of our land was written, the we in that Constitution meant something very different than the we in our time today. We have to think about who we include in our community. Who is God calling us to notice and to care for and to bring into this prosperity that he wishes for all of us, this justice. And like Jesus, to teach others what it is all about. We may need to march. We may need to protest. We may need to write our lawgivers and our lawmakers. But our job is to make sure, as disciples of Jesus, living in our world today, our job is to make sure that all God's people can prosper. All God's people experience justice. All God's people hear the words that God has for us. I give you life, and I give you peace. May we work for that each and every day. Amen.
Amen.